Bret Bielema, Brad Underwood. I actually think that Illinois may have the best head coach combo in the entire Big Ten. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at TheSunnyV. You can find me at IlliniCast. And now on all social medias, you can find me. Just do a quick search for Locked On Illini. That way I can kind of take your feedback if you have any, if you want to chat one-on-one. It's me handling those accounts. So please feel free to. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's going to be, a bye-week episode. That's how I'm going to put it. It's we don't have an opponent usually on the Thursday episode. I know I'm filming this on a Wednesday, but this is going to be released as a Thursday episode. I'm starting to scout the opponent for Saturday. Obviously, we don't have an opponent for Saturday. So I was, as some of you who watched our last Thursday episode, saw me and Kent talking about who the best head coach combo, what school has the best head coach combo in the conference. And off the cuff, I kind of said, hey, I think Illinois might. Well, now I've had a week to think about it. And quite honestly, I think Illinois is the answer here. I'm going to be bringing on Kent in a couple minutes just to hear his side of the story. But when it comes to two coaches that are absolutely perfect for their respective programs, let's talk about football. We're in football season right now. Bret Bielema is a builder. He's a guy who's able to take lower ranked players, less perceived talented players, and coach them up to go up against a team that is lined up with 4-star players or maybe a sprinkled 5-star player. Illinois, when that job became open, was in the dumps. Lovie Smith had left the cupboard bare outside a couple future stars. Don't get me wrong. Devin Witherspoon, Johnny Newton was on that team. Isaiah Williams was on that team. It wasn't completely bare. I'm correcting myself as I speak. But when it comes to depth, well, there was simply none. The floor of the team was awful. And it was one of those where if we were gone up against a Penn State number 9 team in Happy Valley under Lovie Smith, we all would have been worried about that 55-10 loss. That no longer happens. Bret understands that this is going to be a long process, a slow build. He's basically trying to make this a running football team. The trenches, it hasn't been completely built to our satisfaction yet, but Bret's trying. I think he's the type of guy who understands that he's not a young coach who's trying to play for his next job. Bret Bielema's at this point right now, he knows he's hopefully at his last job, so he's patient with it. He's been in the football coaching ranks for a very, very long time. So at this point, he's patient and he's building the program the right way, which is what we need at Illinois. He's got contacts everywhere. He's been in the conference before with Wisconsin. And I think I didn't like it at the time. I was a Lance Leipold guy. And even I wanted to coach from, I forget his name, sorry, at Army. He was the number 2 guy for me. But Bret Bielema really wasn't on my list. But as soon as I saw that opening press conference with Bret, all of a sudden my ears perked up. And I was like, this guy kind of knows. I was very happy. On the opposite end of our football program is our basketball program. And our basketball program has a history of success. If you're not an Illini fan, you may not realize that Illinois is in the top 15 all time when it comes to college basketball wins. And the reason a lot of people have forgotten that is because essentially the decade before Brad Underwood took over, the program was in the dumps. It was probably one of the bottom 5 in the entire conference. But Brad Underwood is also the perfect coach, in my opinion, for the basketball program because he comes in and he understands that there's a high ceiling for it. And he's very aggressive. He'll go all out for that 5-star recruit, for that 4-star recruit. And he's someone who recognizes his inefficiencies. He himself may not be the best X's and O's guys. But what does he do? He hires the best assistant coaches in the country. He's someone who basically understands that Illinois' ceiling is the national championship. In college football, our ceiling is probably just winning actually, I wouldn't say winning the conference, winning 8, 9 games, 10 games on a good year. Brad Underwood knows he can win a championship at Illinois, and he is forward-thinking, and he's aggressive, and in my opinion, the best coach for Illinois, which gives us the best head coach combo in the Big Ten. Now, I'm going to be bringing on someone who I think is going to have a differing opinion, and first and foremost, Kent, I just want to say orange and blue looks good on you.
Thank you. It feels good, especially on this show with this background and, the vibes of what we're talking about today. It feels right. Like, I feel like me and Luke have a connection now.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he had a rough game on Saturday, but again, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, Kent is not an Illinois fan. He, let's just say, made an off prediction during the offseason where he predicted Illinois to win 2 games, not in the conference, but for the entire season. And so when they'd won their first 2 games, he had mentioned that if Illinois were to beat Nebraska, and keep in mind Illinois was a 9-point dog going into that game, that Kent would own up, raise his hand, and admit defeat and buy a Luke Altmaier jersey, which he's going to wear every time Illinois plays a football game this year. So it recently came in, and again, you know what? I think you might Illinois might have to be your second or third favorite team moving forward because you look good in those colors.
Thank you. I think it really makes my eyes pop. I think everything about it, like the whole aura, looks good. But it did actually come in the day after. I know it sounds crazy, but I got a delivery on a Sunday after the Penn State game, so I missed it. And I would have loved to wear it on Saturday night because I was out with some friends. It would have been great, but I'll have to wait until next Saturday. That's why I wanted to wear it on the show too, because there's no game this weekend. So kind of worked out that I was able to be on the show tonight so I could rock it.
Well, like I said, looking good. All right, Kent, you heard my opening monologue. I talked about Brad Underwood, Bret Bielema. I've had a week to think about it. It first came up in our live episode last week where I'm like, off the cuff, I think Bret and Brad might be the best combo. And honestly, now that I've thought about it for a week, I stand with that original opinion. I took a look at the list of the other schools. What are your thoughts?
So I don't disagree with you. I think that, we texted back and forth about this a couple times throughout the week, but I feel like it really comes down to like what the criteria would be for the coach. And there's a couple of things that I took into account when I kind of went through and made my rankings of the coaches. And then, when you responded, you said more or less like, who would an AD want to have as their combo right now if they could have any combo, keeping those 2 coaches together, who would they want? So I didn't have time to go through and like redo it like that. So I kind of just stuck with my like original rankings. And I feel like I have some groupings in the Big Ten, and Illinois is in the top group. Okay. So I feel like I want to lead with that. I do have them in that top 4. And arguably, like I said, based on the criteria that you say, I would have them number 1. It just depends on what you're looking at. If it's recruiting or if it's like, postseason success when it comes to both teams, like football or basketball. If you try to take everything into account, it makes it hard for me to say that Illinois is number 1. Sure. But as far as like what you said, what would you want if you were an AD that was hiring both of these guys together? I can see why people would want Illinois' 2 coaches.
For me, it's like when I was taking a look at the list of coaches, right? I just started off on the basketball side because, Purdue fans get worked up anytime I mention Brad Underwood. But it's like Matt Painter is the best coach in the Big Ten, bar none, in my opinion, right now, a top 5 coach in the country, if not higher. But you have Ryan Walters on the football side who may not survive this year. So there's no way I can include Purdue on that list. We have a guy like Tom Izzo, who I think, you might have pretty high on your list. But right now, Jonathan Smith, to me, Bret Bielema at least has proven a little bit more than Jonathan has in his career. So what you're going to give credit to Tom Izzo for, I'm giving credit to Bret Bielema for. If we're talking about legacy, let's put it that way.
Okay. That makes sense. Like Well,
Go
if
ahead.
we're sticking just to the basketball side, I do have Izzo number one because I think that, I mean, we've talked about this before a little bit, but I'll just repeat it. I think that what he's done with his legacy and throughout the duration of his career, his recruiting has really never dropped off, like to where, like in any sort of embarrassing level. It's always been good to great. So I think that, there's something to be said about doing it that well for that long, that I have him number one. And then I don't know. Do you want me to work my way down a little bit? I can go top 5 on this if you want me
Go for
to.
it. Go for it.
So I am a huge Chris Collins supporter. I have to put him number 2 because he's my favorite coach. But as far as
Kent forgets that he's on an Illini show sometimes. But
well, I just like the way he actually coaches basketball. That's why I put him up so high. He's not the best recruiter. Obviously, I think it's tough to recruit at Northwestern, but I think he's a really good coach, and I think that him taking them to the tournament even is an impressive feat, and then winning a couple games the last 2 years is impressive. I have Painter third, and then I have Cronin fourth, and Underwood behind him. That's probably the spot that I would get the most pushback, I would say, besides Collins. I understand that people aren't going to agree with me on Collins, but I'm not going to change that, and I'm not going to change who I am just because, of whatever show I'm on. I love Chris Collins. I just do.
Fair
but
enough.
I can see why people would say that Underwood is ahead of Cronin. But again, I go back to like the success that he's had in the postseason, and his recruiting is kind of what I was looking at the most. And he's done a good job with both of those things throughout his time at UCLA, especially.
So I'm curious then. We heard your top 5 on the basketball side. Let's hear it on the football side.
So I did put out a tweet on like Friday. I can't remember what day it was. It doesn't matter. But I was asking people what their top 5 were. And I have a guy in mind that was not in any of the replies. So I'm going to admit right now that my number 3 is wrong. But I have Ryan Day number 1. I have Dan Lanning second. And then I went Sharon Moore third. I will tell you why. And then I have he's the guy that I was wrong about, by the way.
Okay.
And then I went Matt Rule and James Franklin. And if I was going to get you down to the Illinois guy, it's Riley and then Bielema at 7.
And I think Bret at 7 is more than fair. Like, obviously, he still has more to prove at Illinois. He's won 5 games, 8 games, 5 games, and hopefully, close to 8 games this year, which I think would kind of bump him up. But in no ways am I saying Bret is at the same level on the football side as Brad Underwood is on the basketball side. But Ken, before I forget, I need to hear this Sharon Moore argument because.
Yeah, so to me, I feel like I can't forget what he did before he was the head coach. I think that he does a good job actually calling football games. Like, do you guys remember the Rose Bowl last year? I mean, a big part of the play calling was what he was calling and what he's installed in his offense. So I know that he's a good football coach. The question I have is he going to be able to maintain the recruiting? And, obviously there was guys this year probably that were already committed because of Harbaugh, but I'm looking down the road and I looked at years further. He's still in the top 5. I think there was 1 year in the next 3 years where he's number 6 in the conference in recruiting. I say Michigan is in the top 6 of all those years. So I feel like if he can maintain some of the success, like for example, if he can go to the college football playoff, whether it's this year or next year, I think that his recruiting will continue to stay high, and he'll be able to prove that he is at a top level of these Big Ten coaches.
So this was a very popular topic in the offseason, rank the Big Ten coaches. And for me, Moore was always in the bottom 3 simply because he hasn't proven anything to me. I know he won those 4 big games last year and, major respect for winning those games, but it's different when you're running a program as opposed to having just coaching on Saturday. Just because he wasn't coaching on Saturday doesn't mean that Jim Harbaugh wasn't running things from Sunday to Friday night to Saturday morning right up until kickoff. And so for me, Sharon Moore was kind of a prove it to me. Now, granted, Michigan at this point, their only loss is to Texas, right? And they beat USC, they beat Minnesota, not necessarily impressively, but having only Texas as your one loss, like Sherrone Moore would probably, I mean, he's certainly higher than what the UCLA coach has shown me,
Right.
or even I may even put him higher than Ryan Walters at this point. But when you talk about the recruiting of Sherrone Moore, I don't think it's the recruiting of Sherrone Moore. I think if I was the head coach, if tomorrow I was the head coach of Michigan, we would still have top 10 recruiting classes for the next couple of years just because it's Michigan. It's the brand.
Yeah.
But, just to kind of wrap up this segment at least, let me know in the comments, do you agree? I mean, I think you kind of agreed.
Yeah.
Actually, before we get to the break, let's name who else might be options here, right?
Okay, so in my top 4, I have because I have Sherrone Moore so high, and Dusty May is ranked 7th on the basketball side on my list. I have Michigan and Oregon, and then right behind them is Michigan State and Illinois. And again, a lot of those are because maybe I have some of those coaches higher than what other people may do, but that's just how I kind of shook out my rankings. Again, trying to consider everything instead of just what you got, like what you kind of alluded to, which is like if an AD could hire both of them at the same time. So, Izzo obviously pushes Michigan State way up. I have Smith at like 11, which again, another unproven guy, but I think he's doing pretty good right now. So there's just a lot of coaches like that are in, like Signetti, for example, like he's really hard to rank right now.
Agreed.
Because he's coming to me. I don't know what he did before. I couldn't even tell you, it's called casual Big Ten. I don't know where he came from. I don't even remember where he was at last year.
JMU. Yeah.
Okay. So, he's going to be really tough for me to rank until he's put in a full season or a couple of full seasons. So it made this really difficult, but I wanted to show him some love because he's starting out so high. So great. I guess they're 5-0 right now. So I don't know. It's really tough, but I'd say Michigan, Oregon, Michigan State, Illinois. And then I know on Twitter, I got a lot of replies for my 5th place team, which was USC. So I think that those 5 teams are options. I think that most people probably wouldn't have Michigan in their top 5 because they, A, don't know who Dusty May is and what he's all about, but B, definitely wouldn't have Sherrone Moore so high. But Oregon, Michigan State, Illinois, and USC, I think, are solidly at the top of people's lists.
So just to kind of wrap things up, for the last week, as I was going down the list of different coaches, for me, it was between 2 schools, Illinois being number 1 and USC being the other option. Having Lincoln Riley there, I think Musselman's a fantastic coach. I think, once he's running that program for 2-3 years, that might be the best answer here, just because USC's floor on the football side is obviously higher than Illinois'. But yeah, for me, it came down to those 2. Michigan State, Izzo, again, for me, it's just I have Michigan State like friends who are ready to move on from Tom Izzo already as is. And I get it if you're basing it on a legacy pick. But if we go that route, then all of a sudden Bret Bielema's attraction or ranking gets even higher to me because he's the only guy in this conference who's gone to 3 Rose Bowls. So it's like, granted, it was a while ago, a decade ago. So I understand that. But either way, I think we have a solid list. And I think the main focus of this is that Illinois sports is in pretty good hands, right?
Absolutely. I think so too. I mean, there's different ways to look at the legacy thing too. So like, it depends on if you're just doing the head coaching thing. Like, obviously I keep going back to Sherrone Moore, but like he's got a national championship ring. So like no one else on this list does, right? Does Ryan Day have one? No,
well, not as a head coach.
No, I know, but I'm just saying like, it depends on how you look at it as a legacy, but yeah, we're talking about head coaches. So yes, I understand.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Right after this, we're going to be talking about the men's basketball team, ranked number 4 in the Big Ten preseason rankings. Is that too high? Too low? We'll find out right after this. Hey, NFL fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, Kent. The Big Ten Media Days are this week on the basketball side. On Wednesday, it was the women's basketball, and on Thursday, it's going to be the men's basketball side. And I already discussed the preseason team on yesterday's episode. So if you haven't checked that out, please check out the previous video. And by the way, if you're here for the first time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm providing Illini content for you every single day. There's no one else doing that for you. We're so close to 1,300 subscribers, and we're only 4 months in on this channel. So I appreciate all your guys' support. But all right, Ken, I'm going to go ahead. I'll name the teams in order, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Number 1, Purdue. Number 2, Indiana. Number 3, UCLA. Number 4, Illinois. Number 5, Michigan State. Number 6, Oregon. Number 7, Rutgers. Number 8, Ohio State. Number 9, Michigan. Number 10, Maryland. What am I on? I don't even know what number I'm on. It goes
Iowa.
Iowa. Yeah, I forgot what number I was on. Iowa, then tied for 12th, Wisconsin, Nebraska. Then we have USC, then Washington, Northwestern, third worst team in the Big Ten, Penn State, and Minnesota. So, Ken, let's start with Illinois, and then we'll talk about the other teams. Coming in at number 4, is that right? Is that too low? Is that too high? What do you think?
It's exactly where I would have them right now. So I've said this. I feel like I've been saying it, since the middle of the summertime. But I've said it's whatever you want to put for Purdue and Indiana, number 1 and 2, and then UCLA is 3rd, and then Illinois is 4th. That's how I've been saying it all year, and I haven't really discussed anything like past that. But those are the clear top 4 to me, and I could even see Illinois fans arguing that they should be 3rd. Or even 2nd, Purdue is losing quite a bit. Zach Edey is not just somebody that you're going to replace because you have Matt Painter and he's a great coach. I don't think that that's a thing that you're just going to be able to be number 1 again this season. I think they're going to struggle more than they're not going to struggle. They're still going to be in that top 4, I think. But, Illinois can pull up their roster right next to Purdue's and say, hey, what about us? But I think that, like I said, this is exactly how I've been saying it all year. Indiana or Purdue, I think it's a toss-up. UCLA and then Illinois. I think it's appropriately ranked at the top 4.
Yeah, I'm like you. I have the same 4. I do have it flipped. I have Indiana as number 1, Purdue number 2, and I have Illinois at number 3 and UCLA at 4. But I agree with you that I think that's the top tier. And at the end of the season, if you told me any of those 4 teams were the champs, I would absolutely, I would understand. I can see how that would happen. Illinois, again, the thing with Illinois is I think they're the second most talented team in the Big Ten Conference, and only behind Indiana, just because Indiana has proven guys, right? Now, they're not proven in Bloomington. They're proven elsewhere, but they've got a very I think the highest ceiling in the conference. I have some major other issues with, their coach and whether he's fit for college basketball. But I think just with the sheer amount of talent and NIL that they invested this offseason, that they're the clear number 1 to me. I know the media put Purdue as number 1. I think that is just the safe route. It's because what you just talked about, everyone just trusts Matt Painter to roll them out and they're going to win 22, 23 games just because it's Matt Painter. I want to see it happen. I'm not doubting it. Again, keep in mind, earlier in this episode, I said Matt Painter was the best coach in the Big Ten. So you Purdue aggregators, just make sure you add that part. But I think of the 3 teams, maybe of the 4 teams, I don't know UCLA's roster as good depth-wise, but Purdue might have the lowest ceiling of the 4. And so Illinois, for me, it's just, I know we're going to stumble, or at least my impression is we're going to stumble right out of the gate. We have 9 new guys that we're mixing and matching, all trying to figure out their roles. We have the world's toughest out-of-conference schedule. Indiana plays the Sisters of the Poor and the Sisters of, the Blind, all for their entire OOC. So they very well could be number 1 at some point. By the time we hit December, they could have the number 1 ranking, just because you figure when the preseason poll comes out, they're going to be pretty high up, and I just don't see them losing. There's nobody on their schedule that they're going to lose to. But when Big Ten schedule hits, when it's mid or to late December, that's when I'm hoping that Illinois, Purdue is going to be, of course, be there. UCLA for me is an X factor just because they're new to the conference, right? Brad
Yeah.
Underwood, Matt Painter, they're comfortable with each other. They know what the grind of a Big Ten conference is. Whereas UCLA, very talented. Again, I have them in my top 4, but they may be in some sort of adjustment, whether it comes to traveling and then just the style of play that comes with the Big Ten. And that's why I had them at number 4. But, also, I can't argue with number 4. Again, I had them at number 3, but, I'm not going to – I had more of an issue with no Illini players being the preseason team than putting at Illinois at number 4.
Yeah, UCLA is definitely interesting. A couple months back, I don't even remember what podcast it was, but it was a really long interview with Mick Cronin, and I was like completely sold on this team and this guy and like everything about UCLA. I'm really high on them now. But I think that they have some similarities to what you were saying about Illinois. Like there's a lot of new pieces that are coming together that are going to have to mesh. And you're right, man. Like once Big Ten play starts, there's going to be a ton of travel. And I know they're trying to get like those games back to back so that they don't have to travel as much, but it's still a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And, they have some really, really high like I'm going to go steal one of your terms, really high ceiling guys, but they can be, their floor is low as well. I'm talking about Sky Clark, by the way, just in case anyone was wondering. So like, it's just gonna be really fun to watch them. But again, just like you were kind of saying with your own team, I think that there's a lot of pieces that have to come together for them to be great.
Is there any team not in the top 4, which we agreed on, that you're telling me, like, let's just say this team won the Big Ten this year, and you would be surprised, but not that surprised?
Well, I think I would have to, like, if I had to just pick one, I would have to say Rutgers, because they have 2 guys that are going to be drafted in the lottery next year, I believe. So, I mean, if you have 2 NBA guys that are currently playing in college basketball because they have to play one season in college basketball, you can't tell me that those guys don't have a chance to win their conference no matter what conference it is. So I wouldn't be surprised, but they would have to be even better than advertised, I think, in year 1, which is really tough to do in a conference that is known for having veteran leadership and, can kind of drag out games and things like that. And it's a really long, grueling schedule. So I would still be surprised if Rutgers won it. But outside of that top 4, if I had to pick one, it would be them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option. For me, I think I'm cheating a little bit because I'm literally just picking number 5, Michigan State. But it's just because, Fears comes back this year. Yeah. And, I know Tom Izzo is going to watch this episode of Locked On Illini, and he's going to hear me calling him, past tense, top head coach. If there's one guy who can just come out of nowhere and just win a conference and like, oh, yeah, it's Tom Izzo, and he just show up in March. It's him. I think the team is talented. Again, he just hasn't embraced the transfer portal, which has frustrated a lot of his fan base. But I think Fears is a really good guard. And having him, like them lacking him last year was obviously seen on the basketball court with him coming back, with the guys that they already have coming back. I would be surprised if they won the Big Ten, but not as surprised as some of the other teams. I think there's a top 4 that I talked about, and then there's a clear divide between the rest of them. But all right, Kent, we'll catch up on comments right after this. All right, Jason, thanks for tuning in. Jason says, I would agree with the best combo. Underwood would be the better of the 2. Coach B still has a lot to prove it for a few more years. Yeah, I mean, at Illinois, absolutely. And again, I know I'm being a little aggressive with this, but I just think the job that he's doing at Illinois, where, believe it or not, like some pundits had them only winning 2 games this year and them already being at 4. He's just on a good track with Illinois, at least from the previous 2 head coaches that have been at Illinois. So that's kind of And he's been to 3 Rose Bowls, so that kind of matters to me. Jason also follows it up. Is though Painter and Underwood top 3 for Big Ten? Again, for me, Painter's clear number 1.
Yeah, again, it all comes down to what people are using as their criteria always. So like, yeah, it just depends on what Jason's talking about for his top 3. But yeah, I can't argue with that. Those are 3 really great coaches. So
Right.
like, I guess so. Yeah.
All right. Well, you'll
They
always
do it
be
different
mine.
ways though. All 3 of them. That's the interesting thing about it is like Underwood will go like, Underwood. I don't have to explain what he does, but neither one of Painter or Izzo uses the portal a lot, and Painter like pretty much just develops his own guys, and
Did you see
Izzo
him
is
double
like,
down this past week?
what did he say? I missed that.
He essentially said the same thing, that people are always asking him why doesn't he go out there, and if there's options to upgrade his team, why doesn't he spend the money and go get them? And he basically said that no, I want to get there with the guys who brought me here. And it's the type of stuff that Purdue fans eat up. It just like it gets them all excited and fist pumping and whatnot. It's fine if it works for you, but again, I want to see it the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, now that you have a generational player gone, and I'm not saying Braden Smith is not a dog himself. He's a fantastic player, but he's not Zach Edey. He's not arguably the greatest college basketball player of all time. When you have opportunities to upgrade, in my opinion, right now, you need to upgrade because a guy like Brad Underwood, he's not going to hesitate. He's going to go for it every single time.
I agree. I've said it for a long time. I think you have to have a mix of both. I think you got to develop your own guys, and you have to use what is at your disposal. And to just say that you're not going to do that completely, it seems a little foolish to me. But hey, he was in the national championship game last year, so I can't really argue with him. I'll do it next year if he's not in the national championship game with a over 7-footer that can score.
Well, who knows? Didn't they just recruit another 7'4" guy or something like that? Watch.
Oh yeah.
In the next
Why
line.
is his name? I can't remember his name. I feel like I've said his name before on this show, but I can't remember it right now.
Not important. Regardless, Kent, thanks for stopping by. Let the folks know where they can find your stuff.
At Casual Big Ten on X.com, and doing some more YouTube stuff here and there. Doing some streaming and some videos and things like that. So come check it out. Mainly on Twitter at Casual Big Ten.
All right, Kent. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right. That'll just about wrap it up for this episode. Let me know what you think. Am I drinking the Illini Kool-Aid when I say that Bret and Brad are the top head coach combo? It's the bye week, so this is the time where we can relax. I'm tired of looking at this Penn State tape. Let me know what your rankings are. Let me know in the chat. Find me on Facebook. Again, while you're here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get us to 1,300 before the Purdue game. What do you guys say? If you want to be a part of a live stream afterwards, there's a subtext group. Please find me on that. Otherwise, I'll be right back here for Friday's episode. And then who knows? I'm thinking about doing something for Saturday. If you guys have any ideas, again, I try to produce content for you guys daily. I was thinking of maybe just having a community show either on Saturday or Sunday. We'll see. Either way, I'll see you guys. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.